Good morning. My name is Tim Bunker. I am a consultant in the Graham Sibbald Rating team, and today I'm doing a talk on returns of information, which you will be receiving through the post, no doubt, in due course. The return of information is being sent out by assessors to tenants and landlords and occupiers in preparation for the 2026 rating revaluation. Now, the revaluation will occur from the 1st of April next year, but the actual values are based on rents and costs achieved around April 2025, hence the fact that assessors are sending out these forms. Now, there's a very tight timeline. They have to be returned within a 28-day period. If that's not done, the assessors are now empowered to issue fines, which can be up to as much as £5,000, as a client has recently discovered. And there is really little chance of appeal against any fine if you are out with the timeline. So as I mentioned, these returns will be sent to the owner, the tenant, and any occupier within the building seeking rents, the name of the occupation, when that occurred, if there's been any physical changes to the property, since the last revaluation date. The assessor will then analyse all this information in preparation for his new rateable values. Now, the new rateable values will actually be issued in draft form around November 2025. This will not necessarily allow an appeal, but you can challenge it if it would appear that there are incorrect information has been included in that, i.e. it's been incorrectly addressed, or the value seems extremely high, and there have been changes made to the building which the assessor has not reflected. The formal notices will go out around February, March 2026, with an effective date of 1st of April 2026. That is when the appeal period will kick off, and normally the last date for appeal will be 4 months from the receipt of that notice, but it will be outlined on the notice if there is any changes to that form of legislation. So just turning to the actual return of information form itself, the first part of it is fairly self-explanatory. You will get a letter from the assessor giving you the details of the property that they require. There will be a number on that which you can go online. If you fill in the number on the form, it will take you automatically into the headed part of that property, giving the address, etc., and all the information that the assessor currently holds. So there are certain boxes that you can complete if the assessor's info is incorrect, and you can provide up-to-date information on rents, etc. So we're now looking at the assessor's portal. You can access this through saa.gov.uk. The information will be included on the letter or the email that you receive from the assessors, and you can access the login screen on return of information, which is on the left-hand side. If you then access the login screen portal, it will come up with the assessor's region, and obviously if whichever local authority that you're in, you would put that into that section, Glasgow City or whatever. You will then have a valuation role property reference number. That will be on the letter. And if you type that in, that will take you into actually a valuation entry. So it makes life a lot easier and it's much quicker. Right, so if you've now moved into the first part of the form, it's headed Part A, Property Details. It's fairly self-explanatory description. This particular form will cover retail, offices, industrial, factories, etc. So you put the description of the subjects in there, the date of any change, or the date of the new lease, etc., the information that you're putting in, the property address, and the date again of the change, if there has been some physical changes there. So that first part, Part A, is pretty self-explanatory. So we now move on to Part B. Part B, this is the proprietor, the owner, name of tenant, or tenant occupier if it's held under a license, etc. So that again is fairly self-explanatory. The owner's name would go into the first box, along with the address details of that owner, the date that any change occurred, and then moving down, the tenant's name. If there are various tenants, then you would have to put each tenant who occupies part of the building within that box, and then the date that the change occurred. We then move down to the next box, which is occupier. Again, that's fairly self-explanatory. So that would be more or less a subtenant, and then a date of change of the subtenancy, which would be relevant. The reason for the required dates in all these cases is that, as I mentioned earlier, the valuation role is based on rents and costs achieved around April 2025. So obviously, if the date of these changes occurred well before that, then those rents or costs have to be updated accordingly to April 2025. So moving further down, we get to part C, and this is where the rent figures are required. So that's the current rent, and then the effective date of that rent. So if that was 2 or 3 years ago, obviously the assessor will have to be aware of that to be able to update that. Then the next section is alterations or changes to that property. So that would be whether there's been a change of use, or whether the property's maybe been split, or air conditioning, or central heating, etc., or the property's been upgraded. All of that information should be put in there, along with any change of use that may have occurred. So we move down from that to part E. Moving on to part E, this is the contact details of the person who has completed the form. So that's whether you are acting as proprietor, tenant, or occupier, or as the agent for either of those. Your name would go in, the organization that you represent, and again, your address, phone, and email number. So if your agent for your company has filled this in, their information would be provided there, because they are the party who are going to have to sign off, and the assessor would get back to them if there's any clarification needed at a future date. This is a fairly generic form, but each assessor throughout Scotland has their own format, and some of these may differ. Although the information requested is more or less the same, the order of events or the questions may be worded slightly differently, but the effect is more or less the same. So that form is fairly self-explanatory, but the information is vital to be correct, in that if incorrect information is completed, the assessor can in fact issue a fine for that, as well as if it's out with the timescale. So the information and timing is extremely important. If there is any information that you require or assistance, we can assist in completing the form on your behalf, and please do not hesitate to contact us to take that forward. And I hope this has been helpful. Thank you very much.